Hey Adventurers, so it's been a while since we've done a book review, and I finally finished the book that we were reviewing next, and that is Catching Fire. So this is our Catching Fire review / discussion. As we've said in previous reviews, we're kind of following our what makes a story enjoyable to us outline for our reviewed outline as well. So we're kind of using those 5 elements of story as a format for how we review our books. So the first point is characters, and we added some new characters this time around because there's some more that become more prominent than in the first Hunger Games book. In the first Hunger Games review, we really just had Katniss and Peta, but this one we've added a couple more. We still have some thoughts, I don't know if they're new, but we still have some thoughts for Katniss and Peta as well, but the main focus will be on these newer characters. So for Katniss, in this book, she actually gets a fair amount of character development. First off, she has to deal with the trauma of having to, having fought in the last Hunger Games. And on top of that, she has to, as she's going through the book, she has to learn who she's actually fighting, what it is that she believes in, and what she feels is worth fighting for.
What I find is interesting is in this book, she is growing as a character, and she's trying to grow certain relationships, like with her mother and with Prim, but by not dealing with the trauma that she has from the Hunger Games, I feel like it's being counter-effective. It's pushing her away from her mother and Prim, because it's pushing her away from the people who love her and want to help her.
So for Peta, again, reading this through, I don't feel like he's the worthless, whiny character that everybody makes him out to be when they're talking about the series. I feel like he actually is a very strong character. He's got a lot of personality, and he has different strengths than your normal main character. But that's because he's not the main character. He's the ally to Katniss, and his strengths don't necessarily lie in amazing fighting skills. He can't shoot the bow or fight with a sword or anything as well as some of the other characters. But what he can do is he has a way with words such that he can speak and he can move people and he can influence people in that way.
Peta's almost at a weird point in his overall character arc in this book. I feel like he's at the tipping point, whether he's going to allow himself to be a pawn of the Capitol to save those he loves or not, which is something that he discussed in the previous book, and he didn't want to be a pawn of the Capitol. And I feel like his mind's starting to change in this book. He's starting to see why the rebellion is important. And he was also kept in oblivion about it for a while because that's how they wanted things to work out.
Yeah.
Katniss and Haymitch, but it wasn't helpful to him at all. Made things worse.
Yeah. So we didn't talk about him much in the first review, but this one he's far more prominent. It has far bigger role. I don't know if it's actually bigger, but it's far.
We see him a lot more.
We see him a lot more, and that's Haymitch. He's, of course, the mentor to Katniss and Peta while they're in the arena, but he also becomes their friend, even if they don't really want to admit it, because he's kind of an he is a drunk, and like that's his defining characteristic to most people, and so that's what they see and that's what they think of him. But when you get down below, or above, I guess, when you break through his demeanor of being a drunk, not caring about anything character, you see that he actually is a very strong and very wise character in many ways. There's far more to him than just being the drunk, and we get to see why that is, because we get to learn about a little bit about his background and who he was and what led him to the point that he's at today.
But Haymitch is also, this drunken demeanor is part of what he's had to go through. Yes, he won the Hunger Games, but it was a very difficult Hunger Games that he was in. Mm-hmm. That was the one where there was twice as many tributes, I believe. Yep. And so that was twice as many young people dying, but also he's been shipping people off to the Hunger Games for 25 years now, and there's been no winner for District 12.
Yeah, he's just watched many of his friends, because they become his friends. He's watched them all die.
Yeah, he's watched his mentees die, and that initially made it really difficult for him to invest in Peta and Katniss, because he just expected them to be like the rest.
Yep. So the last new character that we've added for this review is Finnick. I think Kate and I both really like Finnick. He's one of those characters that I don't know if there's anybody who dislikes him. I personally have never heard of anybody who dislikes Finnick as a character. He's amazing, honestly. He's so much fun as a character and as a foil to Katniss in many ways, because he's just so different, and he's a very well-developed character. He has a ton of personality, and like with Haymitch, we get to see some of what it was that made him into the character that he is today.
But it's also interesting because in this book we don't know Finnick as well. In book 3 we really start to get to know him, but in this one we don't have a whole lot of trust for him, just because he's so borderline.
Yeah.
And I mean, all of their allies are in this book except for Peta, or all of Peta and Katniss's allies in this book are borderline untrustworthy. You just don't know.
They don't know at the point where they're at. So, on to plot now. For the first half of the book, Katniss has to try and convince the other 11 districts that what she did in the arena in the first book by pulling out the berries was not an act of rebellion, but was an act of love, basically, because she couldn't control herself and she couldn't live without Peta. So throughout the first half of the book, that's what her goal is to present this to the districts and make them believe that without telling them.
Because she's been threatened to have her family killed if she doesn't put this facade up.
And then in the second half, her and Peta go back to the arena, and her goal is to keep Peta alive. There's some other things working against that, obviously one of them being they're in the arena, but that's her goal, and she really wants to do that because in the first Hunger Games, Peta and Haymitch worked to keep her alive, so she felt that it was Peta's turn to survive.
Yeah, the plot line is a little different, as in the first half of the book is the victory tour, essentially. They're going around talking to all the other districts, seeing that a rebellion is sparking, and seeing how important it is that they behave in a certain way in the arena, and also realizing that this is going to be a different year. It's not going to be like one before.
Yeah. So the themes that I think I saw the most prevalent in this one were obviously survival, as was the first book, sacrifice, protecting those that you love, but the one that I think was the strongest, and she didn't, as she being Katniss didn't realize it until the very end, is that sometimes you have to oppose oppression, even if you don't think it's going to be, or even if you don't like the consequences that are going to happen. I think
Standing up for what's right.
Basically, yeah.
That was a really impressed theme in this book. I feel like that's what they were trying to impress upon you for certain. So.
Yeah. So, and this onto the world/setting element now, and we don't see a whole lot of the world itself, but we do get to explore a bit more of Panem, and we really get to focus in on District 12 and see what that's like, and we explore it, and we get to meet the different people of District 12 and the different personalities and how the people think, and I think that's a huge reason of why I like this one so much.
We also get to see the new world for Katniss. She's not living like she was before the Hunger Games in District 12. It's she's got all the things now. She's got food, she's got clothing, she's got a warm house, but it's not necessarily any better in a lot of ways, because now the capital in Panem is watching her so closely. But in this book, we also get a taste of a little bit more than the 12 districts, and that's the theory that District 13 might exist, and that's not hardly even spoken about in book 1. So we learn a lot about that.
So for the fifth element, which is the magic system, or in the case of a book that's not a fantasy, the special aesthetic, as I'm currently calling it until we find a better name for it, my thoughts haven't really changed from the first one. It's still a dystopian future that I really enjoy. It's still the Hunger Games that is very interesting, even though I don't care for battle royales. But for some reason, I really like this arena a lot more than the first arena, or than the arena in the first book. It's more interesting, it's very unique, and it's almost scarier because you do know what to expect in many ways. And I don't know, I find that terrifying.
The process that it's a planned out evilness,
Yeah.
that it's a planned out way to hurt people and destroy people is almost disturbing too.
Yeah.
And some of the sections of this arena are very, very brutal, I feel like.
Yeah, they're not so much deadly as they are mentally going to destroy you.
Yeah. I think this kind of settles into the setting aspect. We already discussed how the setting isn't changed a whole lot in this book, but I definitely think that in a non-magic book, that the setting is a big part of this.
So here's kind of just my general thoughts of the entire book. When I first read the series, book 2 was my favorite. I think that's a pretty common opinion. And after rereading it, I think book 2 probably still is my favorite, though I do need to reread book 3. I wouldn't say that Catching Fire is as powerful and disturbing as Hunger Games, but it's more unique and it's got a better storyline in my opinion. Getting to see the focus on District 12 and Katniss's relationships really helps you understand her character and understand the world a lot better from her point of view.
Yeah, overall this book is very, very differently set up than the Hunger Games. Yes, they're in the arena, but her whole ally situation, the fact that she has a crew, is so different. And I think a big part of it is due to the fact that she is growing as a person, and she does have this trauma from the previous Hunger Game, and she has this experience. So yeah, it's different than before. It's really appealing, though, to the reader.
Yeah.
I feel like we like seeing this different side of her, and we like seeing how she reacts in different situations.
So the writing style in this one is once again first-person point of view, but I didn't find it as jarring as I did in reading the first Hunger Games book. It was, I don't know, it felt more natural or something in this second book to me, at least.
The writing style seemed pretty general, smooth for the most part, but there were a couple times, and I've noticed this consistently with Suzanne Collins' books, that occasionally there'll just be a single sentence which I read and it stops everything, and I have to, it pulls me out of the story. I go back and I read it a couple times trying to figure out the context and why it makes sense or why it doesn't make sense in my head. So there's a couple lines like that, but overall the writing style is just appealing. It keeps you engaged in the story.
Yeah, it definitely was more engaging in this one for me. I'd probably, after going through and looking at all the different elements and how they fit into the book, I'd probably give this a 4-star, maybe even up to 4.5. I'm not entirely sure because it's kind of a bit difficult to break down for me.
I think it hits a 4.25 for me because the themes didn't resound with me as strong as the first Hunger Games book. And then also the writing style did pull me out just a little bit, and general thoughts. Okay, so maybe, that's about 4.25, so.
Yeah. It's definitely a fun read, but there's just some things, namely the theming, that is a little bit less, it doesn't quite stand out as much as many books do. So.
That's also, theme is something that's really important to me personally. I feel like the book should be centered around the theme in a lot of ways, unless it's a historical type of book. So, yeah, thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah, we hope you enjoyed this review. Please leave your own thoughts down below in the comments if you want, and give us a like and follow us on Instagram. We try and post videos every Monday and Thursday. Thanks for watching. Stay warm.